Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni miliwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are delighted and honored and wicked happy that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Luminary, Himalaya, Ghana, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Shannon Stocker. She is here to celebrate Listen, How Evelyn Glennie, a deaf girl, changed percussion. Before we invite Shannon back into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Astra, the Lonely Airplane, written by Julie Whitney. This is a wonderful book that was truly a labor of love for Julie. It was written after her husband lost his job as a pilot due to the pandemic. This rhyming picture book for kids ages 3 to 10 teaches them about flying, math, geography, overcoming difficult situations, and most of all, having hope. It comes with a 2-page glossary and a 3-minute video of Captain Dan giving kids a tour of the real Astra. It can be ordered online at Amazon and at bookstores from coast to coast and internationally. To learn more, please visit AstraTheLonelyAirplane.com. Join us right now from right outside of Louisville in Kentucky. Our guest today is returning to the show. She's here to celebrate a brand new book. It's called Listen, How Evelyn Glennie, a deaf girl, changed percussion. Please welcome back to the show, Shannon Stocker. Hey, Shannon, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me back. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited to have you on. Percussion has been part of my life, to the dismay of so many people in my life. My neighbors when I was young and would drum in the basement of our triple-decker, and that everybody in the neighborhood could hear, to my wife, because I'm banging on the dashboard as we're driving sometimes. I'm excited. Tell us who Evelyn Glennie was.
Evelyn is amazing. She's such a genuine, special woman, and her talent is just unbelievably remarkable. It's undeniable, and she's inspirational for so many reasons. I actually researched to find her. I had gone to a conference, an SCBWI conference in Miami back in 2019, and it was in January, and we kept hearing the own voices messages drilled into our heads at that point. You know, this is what we want. If you don't know this experience, don't write the book. Let somebody else write the book who knows that experience. And so I started thinking about what I know. I went to med school. I know medicine. I don't practice because I was sick for 7 years and given 2 years to live. I have a disease called reflex sympathetic dystrophy that is now largely in remission. So I can walk again, but I was in a wheelchair for 2 years. And I know disability. I know what that feels like. And I'm a musician. I know music. I played in gigs to help pay my way through med school and through my master's degree. And I'm a singer and a songwriter and a wordsmith. And I think about all those things. And I think that that's kind of what makes me me. And so I started thinking about people that I could, whose stories I could relate to. And I found Evelyn online, and I thought she was initially too famous to reach out to. She has won 2 Grammy Awards. She's been knighted by the Queen of England, so she is technically Dame Evelyn Glennie, and she's very, very well known overseas. And so I looked for some other people, and I found some other people, but I kept coming back to her story because all the interviews I read and the way she talked about her experience, she lost her hearing as a child. So when she speaks, you wouldn't know. She reads lips perfectly. You wouldn't know that she is deaf, just by seeing her. So she was not born deaf. This was, she was somebody who lost her hearing and had already fallen in love with music as a hearing person. So it was a very unique situation. And likewise, through life, I had lost my ability to walk. I had been told I would never be a mother. I had been told I wasn't even going to survive. And I very much related to that part of her story where she was told, you no longer have your hearing. Being a musician is no longer an option for you. And her response to that was, yeah, I don't think I'm going to accept that. And her talent was so undeniable that she not only went on to become this incredibly successful musician, the first person ever to make a full-time career as a solo percussionist. But she changed the rules. She changed the rules for admission to music schools in England and in Europe and for disabled kids everywhere. And that's amazing. I have chills. It's just that part of her story is something that brings tears for me. And I feel very personally, about it. And I'm just, meeting her, over Skype was, a few times now. It's been a highlight for me. And I'm so grateful to her for her input so that we could really, truly make this story hers. Now, this is her experience, and it's true to her experience, and that was important to me.
Yeah. What a powerful story. As you're talking about Evelyn and changing, the way kids are admitted into schools and just hearing, no, you can't pursue this. You can't, you have to stop this. And it's wonderful that she had the courage to stand up and say no and to break that wall. But at the same time, I'm thinking about all the probably hundreds, maybe thousands of kids for different reasons who have heard that you can't message and accepted it.
Yeah.
And what a tragedy that is, because there are so many people who haven't pursued their dream because somebody told them that they couldn't do it, or that it wasn't practical, or it wasn't right, it wasn't realistic. And good for Evelyn for not listening. For not listening.
Exactly. Ironically. And that's the part of her story that is just so universal, because who hasn't been told that they can't do something at some point by somebody? But it wasn't just about having a dream. It wasn't just about believing that she could do it. It was about the work that she put in. She went to this audition and she was told that she had the talent, but sorry, they couldn't accept a deaf musician in the program. And she's the one who went back and said, well, wait a minute. If I have the talent, why are you telling me I can't be in the program? Let me audition again. And, that's a really, really vital part of success, is to be able to go back and say, no, I don't accept that. I'm not going to accept that. I'm going to do this.
Yeah. I wonder how a person can say a sentence like that. You have the talent. You're amazing, but we can't let you in.
Well, it was against the rules at the time.
Yeah.
That's why they had to change the rules.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. What an example for kids, because again, maybe, kids are not deaf, maybe not have a physical challenge or an intellectual challenge, but all of our kids are going to run into somebody who is going to say, nah, this isn't for you. You can't do it. You're not good enough. And what a great role model for all of our kids to know, no, this is something I really love, and I'm going to go for it. Thanks for your opinion, but I'm going to do this.
Exactly. I love that message. I feel so drawn to it. It's such a powerful message, and it needs to be on our shelves. And I'm just so excited. I'm so excited about this book.
So tell me, and again, I'm someone who loves percussion. Most people, when they hear percussion, they think, oh, a drummer. And they can never imagine a drummer like sitting through a solo drumming concert. And on some level, I'm trying to think if I could sit through an hour and a half of just drumming. What's a solo percussion concert like?
Oh my gosh. So you can go on YouTube and find so many videos of Evelyn performing with orchestras where it's not just about being on a drum, although sometimes she is, and sometimes she does do a solo performance. There's one, I wish I could remember which one it was right now, where she's on the roof, performing, I'll have to look it up, but she plays these massive xylophones. She plays allophone. She has over 3,000 instruments that she plays, some of which I wouldn't even begin to name. But she could make music from a bowl. The way that she learned to listen differently was the first time was when she was given a drum and told to take that drum home. I think it was a snare drum. And she turned it upside down and she rubbed her jewelry on it. And she did all kinds of things to feel different vibrations and make these noises that you give somebody who is hearing a drum, and they might not think to do those things initially, but because she didn't put those limits on herself, she didn't put her limits on that drum, and she created something extraordinary by doing that. So, how can you sit and listen to somebody who has a percussion solo? I think you just have to look it up and listen, because it's not just about playing a drum.
Right.
It's not about playing just drums, plural. There are so many other instruments that she has mastered. And actually, I have a book trailer coming out today that I think she's playing the xylophone on that one, and it's spectacular. It's absolutely spectacular.
Yeah. Yes, that's one of the things that people they hear percussion and they think drums, and there's actually many. In fact, piano is technically a percussion instrument.
And she plays piano as well.
I'm not surprised. Hey, I want to dig in a little bit. You brought up the expression "own voices" earlier on. Can you explain a little bit more about that and what that means to you and to the folks in the Kidlit world?
So in 2000 or so, 2001 maybe, a tumor was found in my arm. And when it was removed, it left me with some pretty debilitating symptoms. And by 2007, I was skin and bones. I was about 85 pounds. I was covered in ulcers that wouldn't heal because I have a disorder of what's called the autonomic nervous system. So it's kind of my sympathetic and parasympathetic systems are out of whack. My vessels don't know when to dilate and when to constrict. And so I was having problems getting sufficient circulation, and that was creating these ulcers on my arm. And I had a doctor say that my right arm should be amputated because I was at such severe risk for sepsis, dying from a bad infection, essentially an infection of the blood. And I think it was 2004 or so when I was weak enough and having enough trouble walking that I started using a cane. And by 2005 was using a wheelchair. And I was in my early 30s. And I remember I had to travel for my job. So I was around people a lot. And I'm a friendly person, and I like saying hi to people, even when I don't know them. And people stopped making eye contact with me, and they stopped saying hi, and they treated me differently. And when I was told I had 2 years to live, people treated me a lot differently. And that bothered me a lot. Mm-hmm. And I just remember thinking, I'm the same person. I'm the same person I was 5 years ago. I have the same heart. I have the same emotion. I have the same drive. I have the same desire. I want to get past this. I want to get through this. I am not broken. And that's the way I felt other people saw me. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people did see me that way. They saw me as being broken. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem. A wheelchair does not mean somebody is broken. Deafness does not mean somebody is broken. They just do things differently. And so when I left the country and I went to Mexico, and I took part in an experimental treatment because I had no hope here in the States. And I was induced into a coma using the drug ketamine to completely reboot my system like you would reboot a computer. And that worked for me. 7 months after the coma, I was pregnant with my first child.
Wow.
And by the time I got out of the hospital in Mexico, my ulcers had healed. And I had had these ulcers for years. And they were deep ulcers. And I remember my husband asking me on the way home, should I get a wheelchair for the airport? Because our gates were really far apart. And I think it was an airport in Texas. I think it was the Dallas airport, which is a big airport. And I said, no, I don't want a wheelchair. I want to walk. And I did. And it was not easy. And I was very weak, and my legs were very weak. And it was almost like I had to learn how to walk again. But I did it. And I became a mom. And that feeling of being looked at differently, I won't ever lose it. Mm-hmm. That's now a part of me. And the same thing, I mentioned this to you before the podcast started, but my daughter has cancer. And I have now seen the same thing happen to her as she lost her hair. And, through 2 years, she lost a ton of weight, and she was sick, and she was in the hospital a lot. And then when she was diagnosed with brain cancer, it's the same thing. And you can ask her, what's the one thing you wish people would know about kids with cancer? And she'd say, talk to me like a kid. Don't talk to me like a kid with cancer. Talk to me like a kid, because I'm just a kid. Sure, I have cancer, and sure, I'm going through these things, but I'm not broken. Mm-hmm. It's the same. It always comes back to the same message. And so that has become, I think, a thread that is woven so deeply through the fabric of my being, mm-hmm. that it is something that I'm exceedingly passionate about putting into my work, into my writing now.
Yeah. It's interesting you're talking about the way people looked at you. I know I worked with kids with severe developmental disabilities way decades ago, before I met my beautiful wife and before I became a performer. And a lot of people stopped, especially my friends who were having kids, stopped communicating with me because I was working with these kids that I adored and I loved, and they had very severe disabilities. But it was almost as if my friends thought that they were contagious. And that I would somehow bring something to them. Or maybe it was seeing somebody with this challenge made them afraid that, oh my goodness, my kids might, and I don't want to think that could possibly happen to my kid. And if I acknowledge that these kids are alive, then I have to acknowledge that it's a possibility for my kids. I don't know, but I agree with you that it's really important for us to help our kids see kids who are different for whatever reason, whether it's race, ethnicity,
Yes.
ability level, to see that we all are part of this beautiful human family, that we are all important members, and that we can't do without each other.
Yes. It's incredible when you lose something, that you had, like hearing or health, or when you lose that and you become so acutely aware of how differently people treat you. And like you, we had friends that we lost in this process, and I don't know why. But that's not part of my journey. That's part of their journey. Mm-hmm. So you have to learn to let that go. And that's a tough lesson too for somebody who's 12, 13 years old, who doesn't understand why friends aren't texting or calling the way they used to. That's been a tough thing for her to learn too. But it, like you said, I think it validates the importance of educating people. And I use that word carefully because I hate to, sound preachy. That's not at all where I want to come from, but making people aware of the differences that we have, that might, for some reason, make somebody uncomfortable. It doesn't change the fact that those differences are out there. Mm-hmm. They're out there, and some people may turn their backs and walk away, but others may not. Mm-hmm. Others may tilt their heads a little and take a step forward. And that's what we want. That's what we want. That's how this world is going to come together, is by acknowledging and recognizing and validating the people who are not like us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So very, very important. And I think it's so important. I think that we should just let this hang and let people think about this and really let it sink into people. That we are all part of one family, and that our kids will be richer if we can teach them to reach out, to be friends, have a rainbow of friendships in their lives. And I think one of the best ways to do that is for us to model that behavior.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, Shannon, tell everybody, please, where they can go. Oh, by the way, Shannon mentioned her daughter, and I am putting the invitation out there to her daughter to come on. She's done some amazing things. I'm really interested in sharing those things with you listening out there, but I want Cassidy to come on and share them with you herself. So there's something to look forward to. In the meantime, Shannon, where can people go to find out more about you and find out more about Listen?
You can find me online on my website, which is www.shannonstocker.com. My last name is Stocker. You can find me on Instagram at Shannon Stocker _. So it's all one word with an underscore at the end. That is also my Twitter handle, and Facebook. I do have an author page that I have been very poor about upkeeping, and so my personal Facebook page is really the way to go right now. Shannon, and it's Shannon Otto Stocker is how you can find me there, with Otto being spelled OTTO. And if you wanted to find Cassidy, you can find her YouTube channel. It is Candid with Cassidy.
Awesome. Well, we had a really wonderful time, a very powerful conversation with the author of Listen, How Evelyn Glennie, a Deaf Girl, Changed Percussion. Our guest has been Shannon Stocker. Shannon, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Jocelyn Risch. She's here to celebrate Battle of the Butts. That's the next episode of the podcast. I can't wait. I can't wait to have Jocelyn in here. It's such a very, very fun episode. And it's timely, too. Don't miss it. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, whether it's about people overcoming adversity or about the Battle of Butts, please be sure to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page to find out how you can be a guest on the podcast and tell thousands of people about your fantastic book. It's really, really, really simple. It's really, really fun, too. And like I said, it gives you the chance to tell thousands of people about your book in a long-form conversation that will be out there and available until we stop podcasting. And we don't plan on stopping anytime soon. You can also find out how you can submit your book to our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read panel. If they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Certified Great Read. And then we celebrate it all over our social media platforms and give you all sorts of great tools to let people know about your great book. We also have a fantastic promotion program, a monthly promotion program that will celebrate your book with commercials on the podcast, with shout-outs and messages to our 83,000 social media followers, and display your book on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards. Learn all about that and more at readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Scroll on down to be a guest. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Shannon Stocker. Please be sure to check out Listen, How Evelyn Glennie, a Deaf Girl, Changed Percussion. And also be sure to subscribe to the Reading with Your Kids podcast, because Shannon's daughter, Cassidy, will be on the show in an upcoming episode. Cassidy may only be 12 years old, but she is wise beyond her years. And she has turned adversity into gifts for loads and loads of kids. It's a heartwarming and inspiring story that you don't want to miss. Hey, we also want to thank our sponsor, Astra the Lonely Airplane, written by Julie Ritney. Please be sure to visit AstraTheLonelyAirplane.com. My team, they deserve a thank you. Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Skylar Strauss. My beautiful wife, she deserves all the thanks in the world for all the support she gives me. Augie the doggy, he's here in the studio keeping me safe. But most of all, you deserve a big, big thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.